The environment is probably for type 1 diabetes absolutely critical. So it used to be that we classified it as a disease of only young kids and genetic. It would run typically with certain genes in the family. Now, the way it presents itself, it's very different, and many factors are not known about this. First of all, from studies in monozygotic twins, we know that the environment is only a smaller part, that the genetics are only a smaller part of the whole matter.
Hello, hello, Heal Squad. It's going to be a great day. You know why? Because we're going to make it a great day. And we're going to do it together because we're better together, friends. We're going to start with our quote of the day. Healing is an art. It takes time. It takes practice. It takes love. That is from Maza Dora, a name I don't know if I pronounce right. Our guest today, I may not pronounce his name right either, but I'm going to sure try. Friends, glad to be back with you here today. We are going to be talking a lot of different things with Dr. Matthias von Herrath. We're going to be talking specifically about diabetes. I've been really excited to chat with him. He's a top researcher in this field, or the top researcher in this field. He's the scientific director of the Diabetes Research Institution. It's made him a linchpin in the endeavor to find a cure for type 1 diabetes, which we are very, very interested in here at the Heal Squad. Throughout his illustrious career, Dr. von Herrath's I'm going to get it. Achievements have garnered him numerous accolades, including fellowships and career development awards from the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation. During his junior researcher days, he also received the Grotsky and Scholar Awards from the JDF and the prestigious George Kohler Award from the German Society of Immunology. He has clearly gotten a lot of accolades for his work. We're so excited to talk to him about that. Everyone, please welcome Dr. Matthias to the show.
Very happy to be here.
Thanks for being here. You drove all the way from San Diego to get here.
Yes, and got lucky with the traffic.
So I am so excited to talk to you as someone who was diagnosed last summer with type 1 diabetes, which I still don't know if that's really, what happened. Was it the chicken or the egg? Was the pancreas tumor there before? Because as you may or may not know, I was diagnosed with a neuroendocrine tumor. Did that exacerbate and maybe paralyze, insulin receptors underneath? I don't know. But my instinct when I was in the hospital and they diagnosed me and I had an A1C of 10.6 was, I don't have this. And they're like, no, you need to take metformin. I'm like, no, I'm not taking metformin. I don't have this. I went home. I saw a naturopath. She agreed. She's like, you don't have this. I don't think you have this. I wrote on my hand at that point, I'm going to be a 5.7. And she's like, I believe that. I went on a healing journey. Of course, I did have to get on insulin. I went on a healing journey that I do want to share with you at some point in this conversation where I actually got off all insulin. And then, of course, they severed my pancreas. And so now I'm back on insulin. But my dad being a type 1 diabetic, I think it was a conclusion that was jumped to very quickly that, oh, she must have it. But I think they should have scanned my pancreas at that point, being so old and having this diagnosis. But all of that aside, my dad has it. My brother has it. So many of my relatives have it. It's such a massive, widespread disease at this point. If you don't have type 1, that's a small majority. There's so many people walking around with type 2, they don't even know it. I'm sure you have statistics on it at this point. I used to remember them. It was like 40 million people had it and 20 didn't even know they did, right?
Yes, that's how it is. And it's an increasing problem. It is, it's huge.
And prediabetes. So what people don't know when you're diagnosed with prediabetes, and this is where I feel like doctors could communicate a little bit better. The way I'm looking at it now and the way I'm describing it to people as I meet people with prediabetes is I say the levee's about to break. And once that levee breaks, you're not going backwards.
Yes.
Perhaps, right? You can reverse type 2, but you're always going to have that sensitivity.
Yes.
So if you're pre-diabetic, my advice is assume you're diabetic and cut out sugar forever?
Well, it's so nice you say this because it's one of our major ambitions and wishes for my professional life and career to find a way to completely prevent diabetes. And type 1 is different from type 2, but you have to find the patients when they're pre-diabetic, and we can do it with certain blood markers. They are called antibodies, and they predict how much risk you have to get diabetes. And once we find the patients in the pre-diabetic stage, that gives us a way to do something about it and probably initially delay the disease. There's now proof of concept. And maybe that's sort of the biggest wish, of course, to completely abolish that people progress. From what we can say in this pre-diabetes for type 1, what the immune system does against your beta cells is the same thing that happens throughout the disease. It doesn't change. So your argument of catching things early and preventing what happens later is very important. And on top of it, of course, for type 2, more known than for type 1, high BMIs, obesity is a risk factor, but that now interlaces more and more with type 1. Also, if you are pre-diabetic type 1 and there is risk with obesity, then this accelerates this immune response against the beta cells. So all this together means also you can change your journey. You can actually do something about it. And that's really what we
You said the
want.
obesity accelerates it. If I say somewhere that stop eating sugar, you're going to get diabetes, I get so much flack from people. They're like, sugar doesn't cause diabetes.
Well, it's probably more complicated like that. But what contributes to diabetes, type 2 and type 1, we have all these highly processed foods. So if you create very rapid sugar spikes, we as human beings are not made for that because we, not too long ago, we were hunters and gatherers. So you wouldn't find the sugar right somewhere in the bushes
or
here.
Cheetos.
Or Cheetos. So if that food hits you and you get a direct sugar spike like this, you get a counter-regulatory insulin spike for any healthy person. And that puts a lot of pressure on the beta cells that make the insulin in the pancreas to work hard. And hard-working beta cells, if for some reason you're prone to type 1, or if you have risk for type 2, hard-working cells, we have learned, they get recognized by the immune system. They might burn out. It's actually as simplistic as that in some ways. So processed foods, of course, then with that too much sugar, are probably bad. We even discuss
and fatty foods, right?
Well, it has,
because I see my blood spike if I eat something fatty, if I eat some fried food, let's say. The thing is we as regular civilians, non-diabetics, civilians don't understand what you eat and how it works in the body and what it does. If we understood it better, we would do better, which is why I love the idea of people using CGMs for a better understanding. So it's like, if you're listening to this and you are even pre-diabetic or you're just curious, you want to be better, get a CGM monitor, a continuous glucose monitor, put it on your body and start watching what you eat and how much it spikes your sugar, because that's the only way I understand it now. Now I look at commercials and I'm like, oh, they're trying to kill us. They're giving us all this food. They're trying to kill us because none of it's real. It's all high fat, high sugar. And our bodies can't handle that. It's almost like when they talk about the sustained fight or flight in our bodies can't handle sustained fight or flight. It was meant for a lion chasing us and then, okay, we're done. But that's why that contributes to autoimmune issues, that high stress, high fight or flight system.
Sure it does.
So now the same thing with food. If you're continuously eating these kinds of foods, you're putting your body in high stress, those beta cells, as you said, as the top researcher on beta cells, you're putting those in high stress. Eventually, they're going to, excuse my language, shit the bed, because it's just like you can only take so much. You're going to burn out from a job. The beta cells are going to burn out. So if you wear a monitor, you'll really start to see, oh my gosh, when I eat a French fry or when I eat this, when I eat that, that's what happens. And then you'll adopt better habits.
Yeah, and what I particularly like about this, and we have done, my wife and I have done it recently to put a glucose sensor on us for precisely the reason. First of all, it puts the control back into yourself as an individual or patient. This works for a patient journey a lot better because it gives you the control to control your destiny, and you can see what you eat and what happens. I tend to think it will even get, let's say, more complex, but also more interesting. I'm not entirely convinced that the food that would make you spike is the same food that would make me spike, because we have different gut microbiomes and functions. But learning this will be so good, because then as an individual you can start avoiding this, and it's sort of an immediate feedback. Immediate feedback kind of works well, better than the doctor saying, oh, you should do this and then you should do this. And the usual atmosphere, which I usually have control of my own journey with physicians, but you still get the shaming.
Yes.
You know? And the shaming does not work well for any of us. It doesn't work well for kids. It doesn't work well for adults. It's not the right way to steer somebody in the right direction, I think. And so with that, this autologous feedback almost, so you have your glucose sensor and you get your measurements, that puts you
it gives you those aha moments.
Exactly.
And you get excited about it rather than
because
someone scolding you and telling you don't eat this or this is bad for you.
Yeah.
Unless you understand the why, it's hard. I want to talk about the gut microbiome in a little bit, but before we get to that, as someone who is researching this, I know you do a lot of research on the environmental factors of diabetes, and I think that's also a big part of why my sugar will spike with certain things, and let's say my dad, who's also type 1, won't. Along with, like you said, our systems are just different.
Yeah.
Everyone's system is either overloaded more or less. Maybe I have more stress than my dad, and maybe that's why my body doesn't process things as easily. So you have to understand everything is individual. But then there's environmental factors too. Like I can go in the shower and my blood sugar will spike if it's too hot.
Yeah, well, the environment is probably for type 1 diabetes absolutely critical. So it used to be that we classified it as a disease of only young kids and genetic. It would run typically with certain genes in the family. Now, the way it presents itself, it's very different, and many factors are not known about this. First of all, from studies in monozygotic twins, we know that the environment is only a smaller part, that the genetics are only a smaller part of the whole matter. And the environment plays a role, not only infections, but what you eat, probably certain toxins, the overall environment. And it's a very, you would say, complex, multifactorial disease. What also has come out of this, now that we have more, that is sort of this iceberg image, that you sort of have a lot of iceberg under the sea, and it's slowly coming up now. We have much more late diagnosed type 1 diabetes in adults. I tend to think...
Like me.
Yep. And I tend to think, I mean, your case is more complicated because of the peanut and the very difficult association of peanuts with the type 1 diabetes.
Peanut is the pancreas neuroendocrine tumor.
Exactly. But in general, we have many patients who get diagnosed at adults, and that situation is probably underappreciated, and the journeys are underappreciated. I tend to think if you would screen every adult for prediabetes, like you suggested in the beginning, that the rate is maybe somewhere between 3 to 7% of patients who are wrongly diagnosed with type 2 will actually have an immune component type 1. That's alone in the United States.
What does that mean? They have an immune component type 1. So they're not type 2, they're really type 1-ish?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And it relates to
And then there's also LADA, right? So tell me about LADA, because when I got off the insulin, my doctor was like, oh, well, you probably don't have type 1. I go, but you guys were so committed that I had type 1 before. Now that I got off insulin, I now all of a sudden might have LADA. It's funny how things shift. But explain LADA too, because is that maybe what you were saying?
Well,
with type 1.
So here's my take on this. And we have studied the human pathology from a network that is a pancreatic organ donor network. And we have understood a lot better about this disease in the last 15 years. I tend to not being convinced that the pathology in the pancreas, what actually happens to your beta cell for LADA, is completely different than what happens in a young child destroying the beta cells. I usually use this wildfire analogy from California, which we are familiar with. It's just less fire if you get diagnosed late, and more fire if you get diabetes, unluckily, with age 2 or so. But still the same fire.
And do you mean with less fire, you have more C-peptide, which means you're producing a little bit more insulin than the other person with the more fire?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So if it burns faster, you burn the beta cells faster. And if it burns slower, you have usually, like it was classified as a separate diabetes, but I think it's just a slow form of the same process of people who are at risk for this immune accompaniment. In my wishful thinking, we would classify things at the end different. Insulin resistance, which I know you have talked a lot about in your show, factors such as obesity that contribute, inflammation that contribute, and then these immune components that are most prevalent in type 1 diabetes. And one thing you said about this nutrition, what happens is that the beta cells, when they get stressed and worked hard and are not happy with their workload, they become kind of visible.
They quiet quit.
Yeah.
Have you heard of quiet quitting? It's like the new thing that young people do. I swear to God, I think that's what beta cells do. And by the way, this is my favorite conversation ever, because what we're doing is I think we're going to get through to people to understand the why. Why this is important. Those beta cells are quiet quitting. They're saying, I'm not really going to do the job anymore. I'll still be here. I'll pretend, but I'm not doing the job anymore.
That's actually what happens. You have at the time when you get diagnosed with the typical type 1, you have a bunch of these guys just sitting it out and going like, well, we are not part of the party here anymore. This got way too stressful for us, and they're just sitting there. And you can re-engage some of them after they had gotten off the bus. So you can get some of them on the bus if you take the pressure of the immune system away. And somehow, paradoxically, the immune system always surveys our organs for pathogens, invaders. That's why we have it. And when these beta cells get too stressed in the pancreas, the immune system starts recognizing them as something it should probably eliminate and clean up. Just the same, you have alopecia, the immune cells go into hair follicles and start interfering with the production of your hair. They all of a sudden think that things are not right, and they start recognizing them.
And they attack.
And then that's not good for obvious reasons, because they do what they should do to viruses and other invaders, and they do it to your own beta cells, and then the attacking immune cells is not good. I mean, that's what they're made for.
It seems like it's a cascade. It seems like there's a cascade of one autoimmune condition leading to the other, and then it leads to cancer. Am I crazy?
I think in my mind, it's linked all through the dysfunction of the immune system, and a big factor that causes this is this inflammation through stress that you have talked about a lot right in this show here. You have stress, you have high cortisol levels, you're always ratcheted up to 180, and that makes inflammation. Inflammation distracts your immune system and get it in some distracted, overactivated state, if you want so. And when the immune system doesn't work, surveillance goes out of the window. So that means you can get infections. If surveillance doesn't work, you get cancers, because a big task of the immune system is to find cancers early and selectively take these cells out. And the immune system tends to get confused, and you get these autoimmune conditions where it starts seeing cells it shouldn't be seeing and thinks there's the cancer, but it's actually not a cancer. It's just your beta cells working overtime and being stressed. So it's sort of a derailment of the basic function. And you're right, then you have higher risk for cancer, you have higher risk for inflammatory diseases, including autoimmune diseases, and you have higher risk often for infections. And infections are not intrinsically good for you. They're certainly not severe ones like COVID. And so they further weaken the ones of us who are unlucky enough to get a severe infection, right?
Yeah. I'm on a stress diet. So I recently had a breakthrough. And my breakthrough was, okay, I was meditating and I said, autoimmune diseases are your body, it's your body fighting itself. And then I realized, okay, so I had a lot of reasons for being stressed growing up. I had a lot of reasons being stressed in the workplace. Now I run my own show. I don't have any reasons to be stressed anymore. All the monsters in my yellow brick road are gone. And yet I'm fighting myself, just like my body's fighting itself. So I realized I can delete me fighting myself. I'm going to go on a stress diet. Well, what is that going to look like? It has to be an actionable step. You can't just say, I'm going to stop stressing, because we all say that and we'd keep doing it. So I said, all right, before I was diagnosed with diabetes, I had quit sugar 2 years prior. Cut it. The only thing I would have was maybe an occasional Arnold Palmer that had lemonade, obviously. With drinks, I didn't worry. I just cut out all the desserts and all the sugary things. I know how to quit food. I have a very high discipline. So I said, I'm going to use the way I cut sugar and soda and chicken and things like that. I'm going to take that and apply it to this called stress. I'm going to go on a stress diet. So I'm somebody that has to be on time or early. I'm somebody who has to have it all right. And I'm like, no, I'm going to be late. So I've been practicing being late. It's been really nice. I've been practicing moving slower and not being overstressed, because I know that I've gone through so much that I have to be extra cautious, and I want to completely heal from everything going on. I want all the autoimmune diseases to be reversed, and I know it's possible. And so I have to do extra work to be able to get there. And I'll tell you, I ended up with a 5.6 A1C. I ended up regenerating my C-peptide from non-existent to a 1.1 with meditation. I would focus on the numbers that I wanted. I would go get my blood work, doctor. And on the way home from the doctor's office, giving the blood, I would buy myself flowers and pre-celebrate the victory of having good blood work. All of these things I know helped me eventually get off of insulin, which was very scary. I didn't tell any doctors I had done it, but I did. I got off all insulin last October. I had just started working out in August, so that was the final step, I think. But I figured out a way to manage it with an extremely clean diet. Anytime my blood sugar would raise because I did something wrong, maybe I ate out and they put something on the broccoli that wasn't supposed to be on there, I would do jumping jacks in the bathroom. I would do all kinds of exercises in the car, whatever I had to do to avoid taking shots. And so I believe that there's a way. I just don't believe that anybody really has faith in us as people that we can do what we have to do to do this. I know it's not possible for everybody. I caught it right in the beginning. I made a conscious decision because I was mad I got diagnosed at first. And I said, screw it. Now I'll eat whatever I want and I'll just take insulin. And that was me being a brat. But then after I said, no, I'm actually going to go the opposite way. I'm going to do as little insulin as possible. I'm going to eat so clean that I don't really need the insulin, and I'm not going to allow my pancreas to get used to this support exogenously. I'm going to tell it that it's got to get back to work. So now what I've been doing, and it's been working, is at night, after my prayers, I tell my brain, I say, brain, you instruct so many things in my body all day long without my permission. You just do it. I would like for you to tell my pancreas to generate more insulin so that I don't have to do as much insulin anymore. Could you please create more insulin receptors? Now I'm going to say, can you help the beta cells be happy? Beta cells, I'm giving you a raise. I'll talk nice to them. And my blood sugar goes low every night now. And it wasn't before, it was going high. And I just have to keep remembering to do it during the day, because I believe that the brain doesn't know the difference between perception and reality. So I'm just coaching it on what I want it to do. Have you done any research on the brain and meditation with diabetes?
Well,
and should we start something?
For sure, de-stressing is important. And like you just said, for me, this is also work in progress. Being able to say no, not to get too confounded and befuddled over too many talks that might be different and stressing me out, realizing there's a problem and being more present for the family, these type of things. I think they're very important. They're very important for keeping our body in balance. I have another snippet about this whole theme of maybe indirectly also the mindset and how our organs are connected to our brain and our, let's say, the innervation. So there's very interesting studies by others, also by ourselves. This is in animal models. So when you cut certain parts of the innervation of the pancreas.
What is the innervation of
So
the
the
pancreas?
nerves go into the pancreas. All our organs have different nerves going. And not the type of nerves where you think you move your hand, but sort of the nerves that are called more autonomous, that regulate your gut function, that can regulate how you sense things, how you sweat. There's many different types of classes. So many of these go also to our inner organs. And when you interrupt some of those, then the beta cells, the insulin-making cells, become invisible to attacking immune cells. And I found this amazing. We had a very, let's say, simplistic model. We had a beacon on the beta cells and immune cells that would recognize those. This was our animal model. So it's not very complicated. Here a target, here the army, and they would knock these beta cells out. What was the surprise is if the innervation to the location to the pancreas was cut, this process entirely stopped. And it gets better because you can say, if that's true, that the nerves, certain nerves go into parts of our body, setting sort of the gauge whether a disease develops or not, then we have a completely different way how we could treat this type of diseases or tackle this type of diseases. And we started thinking about this, and I don't know whether you ever thought about this. There's diseases that are symmetric, like vitiligo, where you lose your pigment in the skin. There's certain examples of the disease. It's like a mirror image on hands and in the face. If it were a random thing where just immune cells go around and find stuff, it would not be symmetric. The only reason to explain that this is symmetric is that the nerves going there play a role in setting the gauge whether the immune system is ready to attack, sort of like a command center. So in that, in my mind, opens up a whole field of research that's underserved because it relates to what you were talking about of de-stressing and meditating and having the right mindset to heal your body. And coming at this from a central, like, nervous system type of vantage point, I think is probably the next frontier. And if we understand this better, we can probably get at preventing and healing many inflammation diseases.
So what interrupted the innervation?
In this case, we could do it with medicines.
So it was like
crude,
like a Botox or something?
Yeah, crude at this point, or cut the nerve.
Okay.
So that's not something that's early research.
Huh.
Evidently, I wouldn't recommend that at this point, but it's a starting point, that the realization that if you can interrupt some nerves to an area of a body that has a disease and the disease stops, that's actually pretty cool.
Well, wouldn't the nerves stop? Wouldn't the communication just stop because the nerves are dead or paralyzed? That means nothing can transfer through. There's no highway to get to the army can't get to the enemy.
So the army comes to the blood vessels and lymphatics, and the nerves, they just run as highways. So the nerves, let's say, is your communication line, and the army comes from elsewhere. And somehow this communication line, if you interrupt certain parts of it, the army is not interested in the organ anymore.
Interesting. So they're not going through that highway. They're going through the vessels and the lymphatic, which is probably why it's really important to do rebounding for the lymphatic drainage, right?
Yeah.
If that lymphatic gets clogged up,
Yeah.
probably isn't good, right?
Yes, I would think all of these things fit together, and we you said it many times before. We don't look at the body and the patient journey enough in this country for sure in a holistic way. We always break things down. They send you for this. They say, well,
Specialist.
it's your little toe, specialist. Oh, it's your hair, specialist. Oh, autoimmune disease here, dermatology. But these things,
They're all
you said,
interconnected.
of course they are.
Yeah.
And in parts of the nervous system, to our mind. And if we don't understand the whole patient and these type of things, we probably miss something, especially here where the average time, I counted, what did I do? I had a neck ache. That's my favorite thing. So it was a special neck ache. It was not the normal neck ache. So I want to have something done about it. I see physician for like 10 minutes for the $300 it goes. And what do I walk home with? With the diagnosis.
And a pill.
Yeah, in this case, the recommendation to buy an Amazon neck brace. Okay. And on top of it, the recommendation that my posture is evidently bad. So shaming me, which I already knew because my mom used to say it to me all the time. And you walk home and you go like, great, posture is bad, buy the Amazon neck brace, and you still have your neck ache and nothing is fixed.
Yeah.
That's how these things.
And also, if you have a neck ache and it's out of the ordinary, wouldn't you want to scan it just to make sure there's nothing there?
I mean, if you
Right?
just have a little tense thing, you don't usually go see the doctor. So it's right to your point that you often made. You go see the doctor if you really feel something is wrong, and you have to keep on knocking at the doors to make your own journey.
We'll send you to Dr. Burke. Dr. Burke's a really great chiropractor. He'll do a scan in the office. He'll make sure there's no tumor or anything there. And then he'll adjust you and we'll help. Because that is also chiropractic work, I think, is so important. Because if everything's off and the communication line for the cervical fluid isn't going down, that's where you're going to have other problems. Like everything just has to be in its place. But friends, we're going to leave this right here because we have so much more to get into with Dr. Matthias. So we're going to stop right here, come back tomorrow for part 2, where we'll talk about how light could be the answer to obesity and so much more. In the meantime, be nice people, make good choices, and be present.
This podcast and all related content published or distributed by or on behalf of Maria Menounos or mariamenounos.com is for informational purposes only and may include information that is general in nature and that is not specific to you. Any information or opinions expressed or contained herein are not intended to serve as or replace medical advice, nor to diagnose, prescribe, or treat any disease, condition, illness, or injury, and you should consult the healthcare professional of your choice regarding all matters concerning your health, including before beginning any exercise, weight loss, or healthcare program. If you have or suspect you may have a healthcare emergency, please contact a qualified healthcare professional for treatment. Any information or opinions provided by a guest expert or host featured within website or on company's podcast are their own, not those of Maria Menounos or the company. Accordingly, Maria Menounos and the company cannot be responsible for any results or consequences or actions you may take based on information or opinions.